for our panel discussion today about the GKR. I'm Jennifer Davis, and I'm the Scholarship and Data Librarian at Augusta University. And I have with me today some other panelists who are part of our GKR coordinating committee. And I'll let them kind of introduce themselves and talk about themselves, and let's try and see if I can move forward. There we go. So I'm at Augusta University, and I've been in this role for almost 3 years, managing our repository, Scholarly Commons. So Chelsea, I'll let you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Dixon, and I'm the Scholarly Communications Librarian for Kennesaw State University, our library system, which is located in both Kennesaw and Marietta, Georgia. So I've held my position for a little over a year now, and I work with our digital scholarship strategist. Her name is Heather Hankins, to promote our repository. I got my master's in library science from Florida State University and my second master's of science in information technology from Kennesaw State. So I'll pass it over to Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Galoop. I am the Special Collections and Digital Initiatives Librarian at the University of North Georgia. I am the repository manager for our school, and I've been in this role for almost 7.5 years now.
Jackie? Hi, my name is Jackie Radebaugh, and I'm the head of technical systems and services at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. And I've been the repository manager of the CSU ePress for about 11 years.
So today we're going to just go through a little introduction about the GKR for those of you who may not be familiar with it, and then we're going to kind of talk back and forth with each other about our experiences with the GKR and then with our own repositories. So I'm just going to start off giving a brief history. So the Georgia Knowledge Repository is an initiative of Galileo that officially launched in September of 2013. But planning began much earlier than that, starting in 2004, and we successfully were granted an IML Institute of Museum and Library Services grant to launch in 2009 for 3 years. So that is kind of it was a long beginning of trying to get this repository going, and so far it's been very successful. Georgia Tech was the first host of the GKR, but then in 2012 we transitioned the GKR to be hosted by or managed by Galileo itself. We started with 4 institutions, then grew to 8, then grew to 10, and now includes the 16 institutions that you see here on your screen. So GKR, the Georgia Knowledge Repository, it is a digital archive of all of our participating institutions' institutional repositories. And it contains all of the open access content of the institutions. Whatever content that they have available is through the GKR. So how the GKR works is each institution hosts their own repository and deposits their content. And then there's a mapping tool that we use, or that the institution uses, to map it to the GKR. And the GKR coordinating committee, which all of us are on, we kind of manage the metadata that we use for the GKR. We've actually just did a whole redo of the metadata terms last year. So within our committee, there's kind of a subcommittee. And so if you are mapping and come up with not knowing which metadata to map to, you can always contact us as well, because maybe we missed something, or you have new content that we do not have in the GKR yet, and so we can always change that for you. To access the GKR is we can go directly to the website, georgiaknowledge.org, and I'm going to show that to you in a minute. And it's also listed under Galileo databases A to Z. You can also find your repository or the JKR content through the Discover Galileo. All institutions should have that checked on the EDS on the back end of your Discover Galileo. If you don't, please contact us, and it's a simple fix that we can do for you. And let me see if I can pull up. And good, you guys can see that? I can't see anybody, so I'm assuming you see it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. So this is just the home page of the GKR, and of course you can search the institutional repositories themselves, or just search within the GKR itself. I'm going to this is my practice or test search, so we'll just do that, and hopefully things will come up the way that they should. And so here you see it looks exactly like you do a search within a Galileo database. And so it pulls all of the information that mapped to our search terms from with all the institution repository content. So you'll see the first one is from Georgia Southern, the second one is from Augusta University, the third one is Georgia Institute of Technology. So there's a lot of different content in there as well. And you'll also see electronic resource, journal. It kind of depends on how the institution catalogs it within their own repository. And you can kind of search through just like you would with any other Galileo database by limiting your filters here, of course, and go through, advanced search and everything like that. Panel, did you guys want me to show anything else? Just want to make sure I covered everything.
That looks good.
Okay, because I know we've got short time with you guys. So just to point out the website itself, we have an about, which is our history. You can look at that with our policies as well. And we also have resources that we try to keep up with, keeping them updated, especially about open access, how to get faculty involved. And we have our own presentation and materials that we have done. So after today, we'll have this slides posted here as well on our website. One thing that we started this year is newsletters. And so you can access those here. We're kind of doing it quarterly. So our next one will be coming out soon, hopefully June or maybe even July. But we've started that. And of course, in the past, they've had other committee members have their own newsletters. So it's interesting if you'd like to see a little bit more about the history. Okay, let me go back to this, and we can now transition to our panel discussion. And guys, if you wanted to talk about anything that I didn't show, please feel free to do that. Allison, are you gonna are you reading them or you want me to read them?
Oh,
I'm
yes, sorry.
Okay.
So we'll start with kind of the basics and get some histories from each of the panelists. So how did your institution originally become involved in GKR, and what are some of the benefits to being a member?
So the first one, and we'll kind of go in same order for each question. Augusta University Scholarly Commons, we were part of the original cohort of the GKR, but at that time, it was the Medical College of Georgia, and then we went through a consolidation with Augusta State. Now, I was not here at that time for the original cohort, but I've inherited a lot of information about it. And so we started off with DSpace, and we'll talk a little bit later more about DSpace capabilities. But what we have, our institution has really liked, is that we've been able to promote our collections, particularly our archival collections, our special collections, through our repository. We've gotten a lot of random questions from people who are doing like movies and TV pilots, that they see a picture of something that was in our repository from doing a Google search. And so that's been really neat to be involved with. And also it's been, and of course I'm just speaking from the institutional perspective, not because I wasn't here from the ground up, but it's been interesting to see the growth of the JKR, like starting with, we just started with 4, then we went to 8, 10, now we're at 16, and we're hoping to continue that growth.
Okay, yeah, so I'll speak a little about KSU's institutional repository. So our repository is called the DigitalCommons at KSU, and we began collecting content in 2009, starting with 86 works total, which has grown exponentially throughout the years. So we officially joined the Georgia Knowledge Repository in 2010, and since then it's been managed by a few different faculty and staff members. So I now assist our digital scholarship strategist with the promotion of the Digital Commons, and our collection has really expanded. We've added 695 works just this year, and we have a total of 13,948 works in our repository. So as a member of the Georgia Knowledge Repository, we've definitely benefited from wider dissemination of our work. I think that's the beauty of open access. KSU's scholarly output can be shared through the GKR to anyone that would like access. So in this way, we support the overall open access movement, and we're glad to be a part of that. So if research conducted by members of the KSU community can help another researcher somewhere in the world in some way, then I think we've done our job. So this also lends to the sense of community within the GKR. It's really reassuring to know other institutions with repositories. We can talk to each other, troubleshoot problems, and collaborate. And so I think this makes for a really tight-knit community of supportive peers.
All right, so I am the admin for the University of North Georgia's Nighthawks Open Institutional Repository, or NOIR as we call it lovingly. The repository itself started in 2011 as a part of North Georgia College and State University's library. We of course consolidated shortly thereafter to become the University of North Georgia. I was actually a part of the move to GKR for UNG. We had, or apparently it had been planned to move forward before I came on board. And then in late 2014, we started the talks to join. So we've been officially a member since January of 2015. For us, it's been a great boost in discoverability. So I have seen tremendous amounts of growth in terms of like download counts, metadata hits, all of that kind of stuff over the years, and it's gotten bigger since we've joined GKR. And like Chelsea mentioned, just having a community of people that if something goes wrong or I have a question about something, knowing I can reach out to those people. And we have a larger listserv. So we have the coordinating committee that I can ask questions of, but then we have a larger listserv of all the admins from GKR that we can use for newsletter distribution or questions. So yeah.
Well, the Columbus State University CSU ePress was established in 2010. And we were originally hosted in DSpace, but we moved to DigitalCommons in 2015. Our history with the GKR, we joined the GKR because Georgia Tech had a conference about the GKR during the IMLS grant period. And I was so excited about it, I texted the Dean of Libraries and told him we have to join. So we joined at the very beginning, I believe in 2010. Some of the benefits that I have found being a member of the GKR is that it gives us an opportunity to truly highlight CSU's scholarly collections with other repositories and scholarly collections in Georgia. So it's really exciting to not only be more accessible, like my colleagues just talked about, but it's also really great to be part of that community, to show CSU scholarship with all the other scholarship being produced in Georgia.
So to become a member of GKR, your institution must already manage an institutional repository. So when you're deciding which way to go, you have several platforms to choose from now, which is nice. So why did you choose your particular platform? Do you like it? Are you planning to change in the future? If so, why? So we'll talk a little bit about DigitalCommons and DSpace. So 3 of the 4 of us are from DigitalCommons institutions, and Jennifer is our DSpace, our lone DSpace rep. But we will start with Augusta University. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about DSpace.
Yes, so we are actually in a consortium with 3 other USG institutions, and we have gone through a lot of different changes. It used to be Biomed, and now it's Atmire. But what we like about it is it's very easy. I mean, once you learn the system, it's very easy to manage the metadata and the descriptions for the content. And then for us, particularly with our theses and dissertations with the graduate school, we have the opportunity or the options to have open access capabilities, but as well as embargoing, restricting content for a certain amount of time, and then also just restricting it to just the AU community. Now, I know that we are very pro open access. That's the point of GKR, but there are reasons for restricting material. So I just like to point that out. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then, of course, we can find the content through search networks like Google, like I mentioned earlier, of people contacting us who are doing like news reports or pilot TV shows. That's how they were found us. So that's very neat to do. I would say the disadvantages of DSpace is kind of the language that they use, and you can see a screenshot. And I thought I could take you in to actually show you, but I don't think I can because I didn't hyperlink. So I apologize for that. But you'll see they're organized in what's called communities. and then sub-communities, and then collections. And even as a library person, when I first came on to this role, I wasn't quite sure how the communities, sub-communities worked, because I'd never really used those terms before. So if you're thinking about your users, will they know what those terms are, as you know, being not coming from the library world? So that's a couple things that we've had to become aware of as far as users using our repository, and kind of looking at it from the user perspective and not just the library perspective, especially with navigation in there as well. And let me turn it over to Allison. And Allison, I don't know if it's going to let me. It might. I think you hyperlinked it. Again, I'm sorry, I missed that hyperlink on my part, but.
We'll talk about it a little bit first and then we'll do.
Okay, just let me know when you want me to go in.
Perfect, thanks. So for us, Digital Commons was an easy place to start. It's kind of a one-stop shop. They take care of everything on the back end for us. We really just kind of manage the store a little bit. So you don't have to worry about knowing a lot of programming. You don't have to do a whole lot of build up on your end. I think the hardest part is deciding what the URL should be sometimes, right? Like that's a lot of it. So that's nice, especially if you are kind of the only person doing this at your library. It does create some problems later on, and we'll talk about that as well. The other thing that Digital Commons is it's like a 365 kind of program, right? Not only does it host traditional scholarly communication, so you can upload articles, books, but it also does journals and conferences, and those can be peer reviewed. So on the back end, you can set it up, send articles out to reviewers. The editors have a lot of control. They can go through an approval process. They can choose to skip peer review if they would like to. All of that is an option. With conferences, you can actually post the program. So you can go in and put what time, which event is happening so that people can go to your website and just use that while they're there. We are actually exploring options. So, and Jackie and Chelsea, jump in if I'm missing anything. For us, we don't have enough control. So like I mentioned, they handle a lot of the back end stuff for you. But that creates problems when I have conference administrators sitting in front of me going, our submission link is not working and I can't fix it. And there's nothing I can do. Or we have one conference that tweaks their submission form every year, and we can't do that tweak for them. They have to send us all their changes, and then that has to go through ePress, who makes the final change. So it's become kind of a barrier, the constant emailing back and forth. Our reps are really responsive. Usually the changes are made within 24 to 48 hours. But that said, when your submission form is live and you realize that you missed a key field, you've already got people who are submitting. So you don't always have that kind of time to wait. For us, we are also very much committed to open access. And we're looking at Ubiquity, which is a Samvera product, or they're a hosting service that uses Samvera, which is an open source platform. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. It's scalable. It can move with us. If we wanted to take our repository away from Ubiquity, we could essentially pick up the whole thing and move it. And they also do a great job. They started as a journal hosting service, so their journals look kind of amazing. Anything I'm missing about ePress or Digital Commons? Sorry, ePress owns Digital Commons.
No, it sounds good. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, now also owned by Elsevier. If you want to click the link, Jennifer, we'll look at the actual repository. So it is a pretty structured repository. like Jennifer said, there are big collections, sub collections, and then the actual items. So that's another kind of barrier for us, is it's very click heavy. And if you don't know where you want to go to start with, it can be difficult to find. But over in the left-hand sidebar, there is a search function. So you can search the repository. As you go into the different journals or collections, you can search within the collection itself with that drop-down menu. Or ePress or DigitalCommons is connected across institutions. So if you wanted to search everything that DigitalCommons offers, or all of the institutional repositories that are a part of DigitalCommons, you can do that. One of the cool things is they do have in that sidebar, they have submit items. If you click on that link, it will take you to a list of collections, and anything that is hyperlinked, you can click on that and submit for that individual collection or publication. So that's handy. We don't have to send students to like 15 different places, or faculty if they're submitting. They can just go straight to where they are. If you'll click on the collections link under browse, Jennifer. So these are all of our collections, and you can see they kind of run the gamut. We try to have a collection for each of our colleges, and then within that, the departments may have their own page. So like if you click on the plus sign beside College of Arts and Letters, you can kind of see how deep in the weeds this can get. So it can become a pretty substantial, sorry, yeah, it's tiny, a pretty substantial click list of things. This also is going to list conferences, and then the journals are listed individually. So if you want to click on, if you'll scroll down a little bit, or wait, no, sorry, don't scroll back up. The one journal that's not listed individually is our undergraduate research journal, and it is under the Center for Undergraduate Research. If you'll click on that, this is what the journals look like. So again, this is customizable. Papers and Pubs has their own logo, their own letterhead, and then they put the content in. They can create their own policies, submission guidelines, all of that good stuff. And then when they publish, this journal actually publishes the full issue, and then you can read each article individually as well. So this is the most recent edition. If you want to see back issues, over on the right-hand side for this one, under all volumes, you can see their previously published volumes. And then again, you can search within this journal. And that's pretty much it. Individual department pages are going to look similar. They're going to have the about information or introductory information at the top of the page. And then any kind of publications are going to be listed. They're typically arranged by date and then author and then title. So that's another thing that we don't have a lot of control over. You have 3 different ways to display a work. You can display it by date, title, author, date, author, title, date. So you're a bit limited, but you do get the choice now, which is nice.
So Allison, this is Jennifer, let me ask a question. So you, how do I say this? Do you have to give permissions for them, for CURS, for example, to be able to do this journal, to submit and publish?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
So submissions are open. I mean, as long as you meet the requirements of the journals, submissions are wide open. But in terms of administering journals or even individual site pages, like departmental pages, well, right now I do all of that, but not for journals. Journals and conferences, their administrators are given permissions individually. Usually, so like for Papers and Pubs, we have, right now we have co-editors, but the editor-in-chief has the ability to add more administrators, or I can take care of that for them. You can also set like individual permissions, which is nice. So if you have an editorial board and you only want them to be able to see the submission side of things and send things out to reviewers, you can limit it so that they only have the peer review process, and they can't touch the landing page for the site.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering because on ours with DSpace, we have to give permissions. I have to, or one of our other administrators has to go in and give the person permissions, but then we also have it set up to where if someone deposits something, and this very rarely happens that people want to do it themselves, but that then it has to go through a check process. So like I would get notified, oh, so-and-so deposited this, go in and check it and accept the submission. So
Yes.
I that was just something that I was curious of myself about.
Yeah, and it's that way for like for departmental sites. So if a faculty member wanted to share one of their publications, right now I handle that as the administrator. So they would submit the item. I would see the notification and go in and either like post it or respond to them with, we need this, 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 and this before we can post it, just to make sure that they're following protocol. So we don't get into any legal trouble.
Yeah. And so your submission forms, we use Wufoo. We've connected a Wufoo form for the submission. Is Digital Commons the same?
No, they have internal forms.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you can hide those links as well. So for most of our publications, we leave it open because, when students finish their thesis, it could be anytime during the year. So we leave that open. Journals have the opportunity to limit. Papers and Pubs has a rolling submission, so they leave theirs open all year. Others, like I think the ISSR, the International Social Science Review, have limited times. So they'll have their submission link open for a certain time, and then they'll pull it when they close. So, it's up to you. You do have some flexibility, but all of that comes from the repository itself.
So these journals, sorry.
No.
I'm like kind of interested now. And the journals, are they run by your institution?
No, we are just the publisher.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Journals and conferences, we really serve as the publisher. We don't serve as administrators.
Okay.
I do serve on the editorial board for a couple of our journals just because they decided to give me the title of web editor, so I took it. And it's, again, that's my service to the journal, not a part of my job. So, but like ISSR, they run theirs. I only hear from them when something breaks.
Okay.
And even then, I think they go to ePress and they just deal with it that way. But yeah, they set their own submission form. They have their own editor-in-chief who just runs the show. They have their own editorial boards who handle the reviews. If somebody has an issue, like recently we added a new spam filter at UNG, which filters out all of the emails from @DigitalCommons. Which we discovered when we were doing our annual research conference, and we didn't get any reviewer responses because nobody got their request to review, because it all got filtered out. So by and large, though, we don't have any major problems.
Okay, let me go back to. Oh, I'm sorry. Jackie and Chelsea, did you guys want to say anything else?
Well, one of the unique things that I think about repository software is that not only do people have access to these collections through the repository, but they're also indexed in Google and Google Scholar and other major search engines. So, so people can find our collections through a simple Google search. And so that's one of the unique parts of these repositories, is accessibility.
No, absolutely right. And that's usually our number one referrer, according to our statistics, is Google, which is great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about scope and what we house in our repositories. So again, all of this changes based on the institutional needs and maybe interesting collections or unique collections that we own in-house. So would you guys like to share the collections that you have in your repositories and how they've changed over the years?
Yeah, so I'll start. At Augusta University, we have a lot of archival materials. And like I said before, particularly our medical curator here at MCG, she does a lot of really neat with scanning images. Also, she's been working on a project almost like a narrative history where she's been listening to interviews and transcribing them. So that's really interesting collections through her department. And then, like Allison talked about with her repository, we also have journals. We host 2 that are created or managed within the university itself, and the Arsenal is one of them, the undergraduate research journal, and then the Antidote is our medical humanities journal that was recently started in the past couple of years with our medical students over at MCG. But then we do also have back issues of our Georgia Health, forgive me, I can't remember the acronym, but it's like Allied Health or something like that, that we used to host that journal. We no longer host it, but we still maintain the back issues of it. And then another big chunk of our repository is our electronic thesis and dissertations collection. And we have been undertaking a multi-year project where we have taken all of our bound theses and dissertations that we've received over the years and are digitizing it. And that has been, it's taken up a lot of time, but it's been very interesting and to see people's work in the past and now making it more accessible online. Now with that project, we do ask the authors permissions to make it openly accessible through our repository. And again, that just takes a lot of time. But that's been a project that we've been very focused on the past couple of years.
Hey, so the collection that's housed in the Digital Commons at KSU has really evolved throughout the 12 years since its inception. We began as a traditional repository with a focus solely on faculty publications. So fast forward to 2021, we still collect faculty work, and faculty are always encouraged to individually create what we call selected works profiles to compile their publications in one place. But beyond that, we also accept and highlight various outputs of the entire scholarly community at KSU. So we accept work from both undergraduate and graduate students, gray literature, which is mostly generated by our PhD candidates, and conference proceedings. We also host several journals, including the Kennesaw Journal of Undergraduate Research, which publishes really excellent work written by talented students. We have an undergraduate research award, and our winner is usually always published in the CAGR, as the acronym is called. We also host past and current issues of the Georgia Library Quarterly. I'm sure everyone's probably heard of that, which it's our official open access journal for the Georgia Library Association. And so speaking of various outputs of the KSU community, I just wanted to highlight a really interesting collection of work that's sort of new to our repository. We now also host P through 12 lesson plans. So they were created by a KSU faculty member by the name of Elizabeth Thomas. She is our education and outreach coordinator for our Zuckerman Museum of Art. And so Heather, who's our digital scholarship strategist, worked with her this past year to create this really special section in the Digital Commons, which was specifically for these lesson plans. So they're really useful for educators that are maybe in the field of visual arts and want a lesson plan to use in teaching. So we're flexible in the content that we host, and we like having variety. I think there's always something new and interesting to discover.
So we are fairly traditional, kind of like Kennesaw and Augusta in what we host. We started out with faculty publication and student research. That was the big focus. And I will say we have done, by and large, much better with student research than we have with faculty publications. Faculty are a little more hesitant to share their works in an institutional repository. That's changing. We're getting there. But students have been much more open and accepting. So we also host ETDs, electronic theses and dissertations. Those are more current. So we have some from our nursing program. History is one of the larger ones. And then our honors program, the honors students are given the opportunity to publish their honors thesis as they graduate. We have several journals, including an undergraduate research journal. We also host one out of our College of Health Science Professions, and a couple out of Strategic Studies, which is our military program. Special collections and archives is also a huge part. I was an archivist before I became a repository manager and an archivist. So we do have a pretty robust collection there, including the smaller of the two photos, or the front of the two photos, is a collection from Generation to Generation, which is a project run out of our Institute for Healthy Aging. They're connecting students who are in the Institute with older community members. And throughout the pandemic, they've been calling their partners and doing like oral history type interviews. So we have the audio of the calls as well as some of the photos that the interviewees have shared with the project. We also host open access textbooks, conferences, and art exhibits. We, our senior art students do a capstone exhibit. It's in Dahlonega, it's actually hosted physically in the library as well. But those students upload their portfolio or the pieces that they exhibited into the repository, which has been super fun to see over the course of the years. They're one of our original collections, actually. So we are, have their exhibits going back to 2012.
Well, in the CSU ePress, like Jennifer, Chelsea, and Allison talked about, we have a faculty bibliography that includes faculty publications. We also have theses and dissertations. We have a couple open educational, open access textbooks that are really popular. One of them is called Brown's Useful Guide, that so far has been downloaded over 5,000 times. So we're pretty happy with that. We've been doing some student projects for an history class. A history professor assigned students to create posters describing the transatlantic slave trade. And so we have all the posters in the CSU ePress that are really popular. We actually have been hosting a community project, a project where that contains community information around the Columbus metropolitan area. And this is the Columbus Community Geography Center. And we're slowly moving to more media-based collections. CSU used to have a television station, and I was able to load all the episodes of this TV station into the CSU ePress. And recently I uploaded the videos of the Southern Confederacy and Memorialization virtual speaker series that CSU hosted last fall. And that is really exciting because I think it really shows the breadth of some of the research that our history department is doing. And finally, we have 3 open access journals, and their publishers, Servant Leadership Theory and Practice and Perspectives in Learning. They came out of 2 of our colleges at CSU, but the Muskogeana is actually a joint project, a joint journal between CSU Archives and the Muskogee Genealogical Society. So we're actually trying to nurture not only scholarly CSU-based publications, but we're also looking a little bit outside to the Columbus community as well.
Okay, so one of the most important things that we each do in various ways is outreach. So this includes marketing the collection, but also encouraging participation. So what have you guys done to market or seek participation for your repository, and how successful have those endeavors been?
Sorry, got too clicker happy there. Talking about what we do at Augusta is we try to include it in all orientations, particularly the Human Research Academy and faculty orientations, as well as student orientations in particular with our partnerships. So the Center for Undergraduate Research and Scholarship, they're a major partnership stakeholder with the repository because of the Arsenal, their undergraduate research journal. And then with the graduate school and with the Medical College of Georgia, they do the antidote. And so we have a really good partnership with them. And then, of course, our electronic thesis and dissertations. The biggest hurdle that I've experienced is students seem to be more on board with depositing things in the repository, not so much faculty. Like Allison mentioned before, we're having that same issue here. I don't know if that's an open access cultural thing or attitudes towards open access. That's something that our institution really wants to explore further to see how can we get faculty more involved with the repository. Now, they are more than happy to deposit their students' work, but when it comes to their own work, they're a little more hesitant. And other marketing efforts that we've done have just been, through social media and newsletter articles. We have a library newsletter that we quarterly or by semester that we send out, and there's usually we try to highlight the repository in it as well. I would say the most successful outreach initiatives that we've done has really been the partnerships with our campus stakeholders, particularly CURS and the graduate school, and as you see listed, the MCG. So if moving forward in the future, I hope we try to create more more campus partners, maybe even at the departmental level or at the college level, and try to get more activity that way.
Okay, so as the scholarly communications librarian for KSU, one of my main responsibilities is outreach to our community. So I promote the green open access route to faculty and encourage them to deposit work in the digital commons. It's another option, I think, for those that are looking to publish through open access or those who have published through another open access route, but would still like the KSU community to have access to a copy of their work. So I always encourage the creation of the selected works profiles I mentioned earlier, in which, the individual's research is compiled on one page along with their CV. And I'm also responsible for facilitating scholarly communication events, such as Open Access Week, which occurs in October every year, Open Education Week, which occurs in March, and I recently piloted a new week of events this year entitled Fair Use Week to educate the community about issues in copyright and fair use. So during all 3 weeks, I make sure to promote the digital commons in some way, whether it's to request that KSU presenters deposit their presentation materials into the digital commons. And this year I was successful in convincing a few of my speakers to do this during Open Education Week. Or I craft a presentation topic around the digital commons. So I just wanted to briefly highlight my outreach activities for Open Education Week 2021, which took place this past March. This year I hosted a presentation about all about the digital commons and green open access route, which I entitled Green Means Go, Depositing Your Lesson Plan into an Institutional Repository. So we had 2 co-presenters, Elizabeth Thomas, the Education and Outreach Coordinator for our Zuckerman Museum of Art, and Heather Hankins, our fabulous digital scholarship strategist, and they presented on P through 12 lesson plans that I highlighted in the previous slide. So Heather discussed the green open access route, what it means to the overall open access movement, and how our institutional repository allows members of the KSU community to participate. And Elizabeth discussed her collection of lesson plans and the main impetus for allowing the digital commons to host these lesson plans. So we encouraged everyone in attendance to deposit their work in the digital commons after the presentation. And we had an assessment at the end of the week, which asked participants if they would be likely to do just that. And we had pretty positive results overall. So I think it's really important to get the word out to your scholarly community about your institutional repository. I'm, of course, a huge advocate for the digital commons and the GKR, and it aligns naturally with the work I do as a scholarly communications librarian. So I also encourage the audience to promote your institutional repository if you have one.
So we all kind of do similar versions of outreach. We do the presentations as well. I have a flyer that we've used for several events, all of that good stuff. But, as we've mentioned, faculty are a little bit hesitant to become involved. And there are a lot of reasons for this. Some of them don't understand that they can negotiate copyright when they get ready to publish an article, or some now journals are a little more lenient with what you can do, especially with preprints or post prints of your articles. So some of the presentations, like Chelsea mentioned, revolve around that, talking about green and gold open access and the difference and what to look for in journals. But for us, the biggest success that we've had is with our authors reception. So in 2019, we started hosting. Okay, so we've only been able to host the face-to-face event once, obviously, thanks to COVID, but we host a reception for our faculty who have published in the year. They can submit journal articles, they can submit books, any other types of publications that they've done. And then we have like food and a little talk from the dean for them to come and celebrate. They can share their works physically, if they would like to. So we'll have a little display of the ones that we own, and if we don't own it, we ask them to bring a copy so that we can share it. But we started translating this to digital commons or to Noir in 2021, so this most recent year. So instead of having them just email us the information so that they can be added to a bibliography, they submitted their work through Noir. And then we asked for them to link out just so that we didn't have too much of a headache trying to figure out who could actually post the article and who couldn't. So we gained just in this endeavor 106 faculty publications About half of those were for the 2020, 2021 years. The rest, we asked them if they wanted to go back and submit works prior to be included in the 2019 bibliography. So out of this, we created 12 departmental sites as well. So now we have a more robust picture of what our departments are doing simply from this one event. Faculty have been pretty pleased with it so far. And we'll probably keep doing that because like I said, I think before this event, I maybe hosted 10 faculty publications. So it was a significant increase in what we had.
Well, at CSU, I'd like to highlight a new aspect of outreach that I've been trying recently. Starting last fall in fall semester 2020, I started to teach a freshman seminar course about scholarly communications. And we go through topics. We start with topics like copyright and Creative Commons licenses. And then we move into open access. And we look at both flavors of open access, green open access and gold open access. And it's given me an avenue in which I promote the CSU ePress to students. Some of the students have already found their class projects, or we publish a literary journal, a student literature journal, and they find their work in the CSU ePress. But there's also a lot of participation I'm getting from students who'd like to be included in the student bibliography of works and other aspects. And in the course, we also the class project is to create an open access journal in the CSU ePress. So we go through the whole process of creating a scholarly journal, an open access scholarly journal in a repository, just like if an editor would do so. Like Allison said, DigitalCommons has a whole peer review backend. And so we explored that. And eventually at the very end of the class, we have our own open access journal. So it also provides information to students about open access journals, and which I think helps with their research. And hopefully as they proceed through the university, they'll be able to use the CSU ePress to tell their professors about the CSU ePress and also to publish in the CSU ePress. So that's been the newest way that I've been doing outreach.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left, and we do want to open up if anyone has any questions. But in order to get involved on our website, at the GKR website, we have a form that you can fill out or just email us directly. And of course, we have the GKR coordinating committee through Galileo. So if you're interested in getting involved in that way, but may not necessarily have a repository yet, please contact us as well. That's not a problem. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and see if anyone has any questions. If you can raise your hand or put them in the chat if I can figure out how to do that.
I've got the chat open, so if anybody has any
Okay.
questions, then I can read it. It's quiet.
This is Sean Purcell with Galileo and Gil. This is more of less of a question, more of just a comment. Is Lucy here? Let's see, she's not here. So I'm not sure if she would want me to say this, but Galileo has thought about the possibility of providing repository hosting services. You know, I don't know what that would be. It might be Haiku or something similar to that. But I'd just be curious if you all would be interested in, you know, moving to essentially hosted repository service?
So I will say, Sean, one of the reasons we like Ubiquity is because it can handle consortia. They actually, one of their first repositories, so one is Pacific University, that's the first American, but they actually host a single repository that covers 4 of the big British archives and libraries, museums and libraries. So, I mean, we would definitely be open to that. I think it does make things a little easier and in some ways cheaper
Yeah, I mean,
to do it that way.
and it would also make maybe eliminate the need for harvesting like we
Yeah.
do now,
Yeah.
which is a complicated process because everybody's repos are different. It'd just
Right.
be great to either have everybody in the same repo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like, so Ubiquity they run Samvera, but they're part of the Haiku project. So they are working on this. I think with Haiku, they're working with Virginia Tech and maybe VMI and a couple of others to do something similar.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention something to simmer on. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we have we have a question and a comment. So the first question is, Jennifer, you mentioned social media for outreach. Do you use the library's social media accounts, or do you have a special social media for the repository?
Well, we actually just use the library's social media, mainly because it's just easier that way. We do have a small staff that runs Scholarly Commons. It's myself and 3 other people, which I guess is small, or you may not consider it, but anyways, we just filter everything through the library's social media. And honestly, I hadn't even really thought about creating social media for Scholarly Commons, but I know there's institutional policies as far as social media goes. But yeah.
All right. And anybody else? I know we do the same thing. We have one social media account that we all kind of share and push things through that. It's a little easier to manage because social media takes extreme amounts of time.
Yeah, and we have an outreach librarian who makes
Mhm.
sure that she highlights the CSU ePress quite a bit in the library social media.
Yeah. All right. I don't see any other questions. I think that's it.
Yeah, so we went, it's 10:03 and I know there are other sessions going on today. So thank you all for joining us. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments. You can email us. I can't remember the email right now, but I will put it, I'll just put in my own in the chat here, and then you can email and I can share it with the committee. So appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a good rest of GUGM experience. And thanks to the panel for putting this all together.
Yes, Jennifer, please reach out. We're happy to help. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.